"You let me sleep in your bed, rancher. Get ready, we're going to have children," said the Apache fugitive woman. The night she came to the ranch was cold and heavy with rain. The sky had been dark since sunset, and thick clouds covered the moon. The wind moved through the open land like a warning. The ranch stood alone, far from town, surrounded by empty fields and low hills. Most people avoided this area after dark, especially in those days, when fear lived in every rumor and every sound. The rancher was inside, sitting near the small fire. He was a man who lived quietly. He did not talk much to others and did not welcome visitors. His life followed the same routine every day: wake before sunrise, tend the animals, fix fences, cook simple meals, and sleep early. He had learned to live this way after loss had taken everything else from him. His wife and young son had died years ago from illness, and since then, silence had become his closest companion. That night, he was about to put out the fire when he heard something unusual. At first, it sounded like the wind hitting the wooden walls. Then he heard it again, soft, uneven, almost like someone struggling to breathe. He stood up slowly, his body tense. People did not come here without reason, and in those times, unexpected visitors often meant trouble. He reached for the lantern and opened the door carefully. Rain poured down, soaking the ground. Near the steps, a figure lay half-conscious in the mud. It was a woman. Her clothes were torn and soaked. Her dark hair was stuck to her face. There was blood on her arm and dirt on her skin. She looked exhausted, as if she had walked for days without rest. The rancher hesitated. Helping her could be dangerous. Everyone knew soldiers were searching the area for fugitives, especially Apache people who had escaped forced camps. Anyone caught helping them could lose land, freedom, or worse. He had survived by staying invisible, by never choosing sides. But the woman moved slightly and let out a weak sound. It was not a threat. It was pain. He knelt beside her and spoke softly, asking if she could hear him. Her eyes opened just enough to show fear and strength mixed together. She did not answer, but her hand gripped his sleeve for a moment, as if asking without words. That was the moment he made a choice. He carried her inside, laying her near the fire. She was lighter than she looked, and that worried him. He cleaned the wound on her arm as best as he could. She flinched but did not cry out. Her silence was deep, shaped by years of holding pain inside. When he offered her water, she drank slowly, watching him closely. They did not share a language well. She spoke only a little English, and he knew none of her native words. Still, they understood enough. She pointed toward the hills, then made a gesture that told him she was being chased. Her eyes never left his face, as if measuring whether he would betray her. He told her she could rest. He said it calmly, but his heart was racing. Every sound outside made him think of boots and horses. He knew that once he opened his door to her, there was no turning back. When she tried to stand, her legs gave out. She was too weak. The rancher looked at the small room. There was only one proper bed. Without thinking too long, he helped her lie down on it. He took a blanket and placed it over her shoulders. He moved to the chair near the fire, planning to sleep there. But before he turned away, she reached out and touched his arm. She said something softly in her language, then tried again in broken English. "You bed," she said, confused. "You," he shook his head. "You sleep, I'll be here." She studied him carefully. Then she nodded once, as if accepting something important. The rain continued through the night. The rancher stayed awake, listening. He did not sleep much. His thoughts kept returning to the woman in his bed, to the danger she brought, and to the strange calm he felt despite it. It had been a long time since another human presence had shared his space. When morning came, the rain stopped. Pale light entered the room. The woman was awake, sitting up slowly. She looked stronger, though still tired. She watched him prepare simple food. When he offered her some, she accepted it with quiet dignity. Later that day, she told him her name, though he struggled to pronounce it. She told him enough to understand that she had escaped after her family was taken away. She had been running for days, hiding during daylight, moving at night. She trusted no one, but she had knocked on his door because she had no strength left. He told her his name too, though it felt strange to say it aloud after so long. They shared little else, but something important had already been exchanged: shelter for trust. As the sun moved higher, he realized how serious the situation was. If soldiers came, they would search the ranch. They would ask questions. They would not care about kindness or injury. He could send her away once she healed. That would be safer, smarter. But when he looked at her, sitting quietly by the window, he saw more than a fugitive. He saw someone who had survived loss greater than his own. Someone who refused to disappear. That evening, as he prepared to sleep again, she spoke more clearly. Her voice was steady now. "In my people," she said slowly, choosing each word, "when man gives bed, gives shelter, it is promise. Not small." He froze, unsure of what she meant. She looked directly at him, not with anger, not with fear, but with certainty. "You let me sleep in your bed," she said. "Life changes after that." He tried to explain that he meant no promise, only help. She listened but shook her head gently. "Fate does not ask," she replied. "It comes." Her words stayed with him long after the fire burned low. Outside, the land was quiet again. But inside the ranch, something had shifted. He did not yet understand what the future held, but he knew one thing clearly. That night was not the end of her escape. It was the beginning of a story neither of them could walk away from. The days after her arrival moved slowly, but each hour carried quiet tension. The woman stayed inside the ranch house most of the time. The rancher asked her to avoid the windows during daylight, and she understood without complaint. She knew how dangerous it was to be seen. Even the sound of horses far away made her body tense, like an animal ready to run. Her wound healed little by little. The rancher cleaned it every morning and evening. He used warm water and cloth, careful not to hurt her. She watched his hands closely, as if learning his nature through his actions. He noticed that she trusted what he did, even when it caused pain. Trust, he realized, was not given easily. It was earned through patience. They spoke only when needed. Words were few, but meaning filled the space between them. She helped where she could, sweeping the floor, folding cloth, preparing simple food in her own way. She moved quietly with respect for the place. The rancher saw that she treated his home not as a hiding place, but as shared ground. At night, they sat near the fire. Sometimes he spoke about the land, the animals, the weather. Sometimes she spoke about plants, stars, and ways to read signs in nature. Her voice was calm, but behind it lived memory and pain. She never spoke directly about what had happened to her family, but the silence around those memories was heavy. The rancher noticed how she carried herself. She was not broken, even after everything she had endured. There was strength in the way she stood, in the way she looked straight at him when she spoke. It made him uncomfortable at times, not because of fear, but because he was not used to being truly seen. Rumors reached the ranch quickly. A neighbor stopped by one afternoon, pretending to check a fence line. His eyes searched the land more than the wood. He spoke about soldiers passing through nearby towns, asking questions, offering rewards for information. The rancher listened carefully, keeping his face calm. He said nothing more than necessary. That night he told her what he had heard. She nodded, not surprised. She had lived with danger for too long to expect peace to last. She began to prepare without being asked, packing small items, drying food, checking the horses from a distance. She planned quietly, as if she had done this many times before. The rancher watched her and felt a growing weight inside his chest. Part of him wanted her gone before trouble arrived. Another part, stronger and harder to admit, did not want the house to return to silence. One evening, as the sun sank low, she spoke words that stayed with him. "In my world," she said, "people do not meet by chance. Paths cross because they must." He shrugged, unsure how to answer. He had lived long enough to believe life was shaped by loss and endurance, not destiny. She looked at him carefully. "You think you are alone," she continued, "but land remembers footsteps. Hearts remember too." Her words unsettled him. He had buried his past deep, believing it was the only way to survive, but her presence stirred things he thought were gone forever. The next day, soldiers rode through the area. They did not stop at the ranch, but their presence was close enough to feel. Dust rose in the distance. The sound of voices carried on the wind. The woman stayed hidden, barely breathing. The rancher stood outside, his posture calm as if nothing was wrong. He realized then how easily one wrong moment could destroy them both. When the soldiers passed, she finally spoke, her voice low but firm. "If they come here," she said, "you must choose yourself. Do not lie for me." He looked at her, surprised. "I already have," he replied. She studied his face, searching for doubt. Finding none, she nodded slowly. "Then you walk a path that cannot turn back." That night she spoke more openly than before. She told him how her people had been forced to move, how promises were broken again and again. She spoke of her mother's strength, her father's teachings, and how survival was not only about living, but about remembering who you are. He listened in silence. For the first time in years, he felt his own grief rise to the surface. He spoke of his wife, his child, and the emptiness that followed. He did not cry, but his voice carried the weight of years without hope. She listened with the same quiet respect he had shown her. When the fire burned low, she spoke the words that unsettled him most. "You gave me your bed," she said softly. "Not just wood and cloth. You gave safety. That is not small." He tried again to explain his intention, that kindness did not mean obligation. She smiled gently, not mocking but knowing. "In my people," she said, "life grows from shelter. Children come where fear is shared and faced together." He stood, uneasy, pacing the room. "I'm not ready for that," he said honestly. She did not argue. "Ready or not," she replied, "life chooses its time." Days passed with the same quiet rhythm, but something had changed. They moved around each other with greater awareness. Their words carried deeper meaning. The ranch no longer felt like a hiding place. It felt like a living thing holding two stories within its walls. One afternoon, she stood outside longer than usual, watching the horizon. "If I stay," she said, "danger will follow." "If you leave," he answered, "it will follow you too." They stood in silence, understanding the truth of those words. That night, as he lay awake near the fire, he realized he was no longer afraid of being alone. He was afraid of losing what had quietly begun. Outside, the land was vast and unforgiving. Inside the small ranch house, two lives from different worlds were slowly, carefully learning how to stand side by side, and neither of them could deny it anymore. Whatever had begun between them was no longer just survival. It was choice. The tension around the ranch grew heavier with each passing day. The land itself felt different, as if it knew something important was coming. The rancher woke every morning with a tight feeling in his chest. He checked the horizon more often now. Every sound carried meaning. Every distant movement raised questions. The woman noticed the change in him. She had lived too long in danger not to recognize it. She moved with greater care, keeping to the shadows when outside, stepping softly, leaving no signs. She understood that staying meant risk, not only for herself but for him as well. One afternoon, while fixing a broken fence, the rancher saw dust rising in the distance again. Horses, not just travelers. He could tell by the way the ground trembled. He finished his work quickly and returned to the house. She was already waiting, her eyes alert. "They are close," she said before he spoke. He nodded. "Too close." They prepared without panic. He hid what little evidence there was of her presence. She gathered her few belongings. Neither of them said what they were both thinking, that this time hiding might not be enough. As the sun lowered, the sound of hooves became clear. 3 soldiers rode toward the ranch. The rancher stepped outside to meet them before they reached the door. His heart beat hard, but his face remained calm. The soldiers asked questions. Had he seen anyone pass through? Had he noticed strangers? They spoke firmly with authority but not without threat. The rancher answered slowly, carefully. He said he lived alone. He said no one had come by. Every word felt like stepping across thin ice. Inside the house, the woman stood perfectly still. She listened to every sound, every pause. She knew that if the door opened, there would be no escape. She placed her hand against the wall, grounding herself, remembering the teachings of her parents, to stay calm, to stay present. After what felt like hours, the soldiers finally turned their horses away. They warned him to report anything unusual. They said the land would be searched again soon. Then they left, leaving silence behind them. The rancher did not move for a long time. When he finally returned inside, his legs felt weak. The woman looked at him closely. "You lied," she said quietly. "Yes," he answered. She studied his face, searching for fear or regret. She found neither, only resolve. "That cannot be undone," she said. "I know," he replied. That night they spoke more openly than ever before. There was no point in pretending anymore. The danger was real and the choices were narrowing. He told her that if she stayed, soldiers would return. They would search the land. They might not leave next time. She listened, then spoke calmly. "I will not run tonight," she said. Running without a path leads only to loss. He did not argue. Instead, he surprised himself by saying something he had not planned. "If you go," he said, "I won't turn you in, but I won't forget you either." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "And if I stay," she said, "your life will change forever." He laughed softly, without humor. "It already has." The following days were filled with quiet preparation. They did not speak of the future directly, but every action pointed toward it. He showed her the land beyond the hills, places where tracks disappeared, where water could be found. She showed him how to read signs he had never noticed before: broken branches, disturbed stones, the language of birds. They were no longer just sharing space. They were sharing knowledge. Trust deepened into something stronger. One evening, as they rested near the fire, she spoke words that changed everything. "I choose to stay," she said simply. He felt a strange mix of fear and relief. "You're sure?" he asked. "Yes," she answered. "I have run my whole life. Running keeps the body alive, but it breaks the spirit." He nodded slowly. "Then we face it together." Her expression softened at those words. Not gratitude, but recognition. Days later, the soldiers returned. This time, there were more of them. They rode straight toward the ranch without hesitation. The rancher knew then that there would be no easy answers. He stepped forward again, meeting them halfway. They demanded to search the property. His mind raced. Saying no would raise suspicion. Saying yes would risk everything. He took a breath and nodded. "You can look," he said. "I have nothing to hide." Inside the house, the woman heard the door open. She did not panic. She moved exactly as they had planned. She slipped through the back, moving low, blending with the land. She knew the path now. She had learned it with him. The search lasted long. The soldiers questioned him harder this time. Their eyes lingered on small details. One of them noticed a second cup near the fire. The rancher did not lie immediately. He looked at the cup, then back at the soldier. "I had help," he said. "A traveler passed through days ago. Injured, I gave water and food. They left." It was a partial truth, enough to sound believable. The soldiers argued among themselves, then continued searching. They found nothing. When they finally left, the rancher collapsed into the chair, exhausted. Hours later, long after sunset, the woman returned. She stepped into the light quietly. He stood up so fast the chair fell behind him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he realized his hands were shaking. "You came back," he said. "Yes," she replied, "because you stood." That night, something shifted between them. Not through words or promises, but through understanding. They had faced danger and chosen each other without being asked. She spoke again of her beliefs, of how shelter given in trust ties lives together, of how children are not just born from bodies but from courage shared in fear. He listened, no longer dismissing her words as belief alone. He had felt it himself now, the way life pulled them forward whether ready or not. "I don't know what the future holds," he said honestly. "Neither do I," she replied, "but fear does not decide it anymore." Outside, the land lay quiet again, but the quiet was different. It was not empty. It was waiting. The rancher realized something as he watched the fire fade. He had crossed a line he never thought he would. Not because he was forced, but because he chose to. He had chosen truth over safety, connection over isolation, and somewhere deep inside he knew that whatever came next, loss, struggle, or hope, it would not be faced alone. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was theirs now. The weeks after the soldiers' search were tense, but the ranch settled into a quiet rhythm. The woman became more comfortable in the home. She no longer moved as though she were hiding from danger. Instead, she walked with careful confidence, aware of the land and the man who had sheltered her. Every movement she made seemed deliberate, purposeful. The rancher noticed it, though he rarely said so aloud. Her presence brought life to the ranch in a way he hadn't expected. They spent long days working together. She helped with the animals, guiding the younger horses and caring for the injured ones with a skill that amazed him. He had thought he knew everything about managing the ranch, but her knowledge of the land and the animals opened his eyes. She had lived in the wilderness all her life and understood things he never had to think about. She taught him how to track small changes in the weather, how to read the signs in the plants and trees, and how to notice patterns in the animals' behavior. Every lesson reminded him that she had survived far greater challenges than he had ever faced. At night, they continued their quiet conversations by the fire. Words were still few but deeper now. She shared stories of her childhood, not the parts of tragedy, but the parts of courage, skill, and strength that had shaped her. He listened, sometimes asking questions he never thought he would ask anyone. He realized that while she had survived through running and hiding, she was not broken. She had a sense of purpose that went beyond mere survival, and it slowly drew him out of the grief he had carried for so many years. One evening she looked at him seriously and said, "Life grows stronger where hearts are brave." He paused, realizing she was speaking not about her own life but about both of them now. Their connection was more than circumstance. It was becoming something neither had planned. And though he did not fully understand it, he felt the truth in her words. As the days turned into weeks, it became clear that she was no longer just a guest. She was becoming part of the household. The rancher started noticing subtle changes in himself. He left tools out for her, prepared meals in ways he knew she preferred, and found himself thinking about her safety constantly. He was no longer the solitary man who had lived only for routine. He had begun to care deeply, more than he had thought possible. Then came a day when they realized her time on the land had changed in another way. She was expecting a child. The news did not come with words at first, only small signs he noticed. The way she moved, her hesitation in certain tasks, and finally the way she looked at him one quiet morning, her eyes revealing what she had not said aloud. He did not react with fear or anger. He simply nodded, understanding the weight of this new reality. Their lives had shifted again, deeper than either could have imagined. The rancher faced a choice he had never imagined before. Protecting her meant standing up not only to the world but also to the authorities who might arrive at any moment. The soldiers could return, and if they discovered the child, the consequences could be severe. Yet leaving her alone or forcing her to flee would betray everything he had begun to care about. He realized that his life was no longer just his own. It had become intertwined with hers in ways that required courage, not just caution. Together, they began to prepare quietly for the future. They worked to make the ranch safer, reinforcing doors and checking the perimeter. They gathered food and supplies in case they needed to leave quickly. The woman taught him ways to blend with the land and remain unnoticed, and he provided what protection he could, with fences and weapons he had kept for the rare dangers that came to the outskirts of the property. They were ready in the best way they could be for whatever might come. At night, they sat together by the fire, speaking softly about what lay ahead. She talked about her people, about raising children in a world that was often cruel and unforgiving. He listened, learning that the child they expected would grow up in two worlds, the world of the ranch and the world of her heritage. It was a responsibility neither had fully faced before, but they accepted it quietly, with determination. The rancher began to see the woman not just as someone he had helped, but as a partner. They shared decisions now, from how to care for the animals to how to protect the land. He respected her opinions and she respected his. Their bond was no longer fragile. It was solid, built through shared danger, trust, and growing affection. He could not imagine facing the world without her by his side. As the days passed, the woman's health and strength improved, and she moved freely around the ranch again. She was careful, but she no longer carried the constant weight of fear. She laughed softly at small things, the way a horse acted, the way he attempted to cook certain foods, even the quiet songs she would hum while working. These moments brought a sense of normalcy, of home, that neither had felt in years. And though danger always lingered beyond the hills, it felt more distant when they were together. One afternoon, they received word from a neighboring rancher that soldiers had been seen moving in the region. The news brought tension back into their lives, but it did not panic them. They had prepared. They had learned to read the signs. They had learned to trust each other. When the soldiers approached, they were ready, calm, and careful. They managed to avoid detection this time, thanks to their careful planning and the woman's knowledge of the land. In the quiet that followed, they returned to their routines. They tended the animals, repaired fences, and prepared food together. And in the evenings, they spoke of dreams, not just of survival, but of life beyond fear. They talked about the child to come, imagining small moments of laughter, learning, and family. It was the first time either of them had allowed themselves to hope for the future in years. One night, as they sat together by the fire, the woman reached for his hand. Her eyes were calm, her voice steady. "We will face the world together," she said. "We will protect what we love." He nodded, feeling a sense of peace he had not known since before loss had shaped his life. "Together," he agreed. Outside, the ranch lay under the quiet glow of the moon. Inside, two people from different worlds were creating a life together, built on trust, courage, and the quiet determination to survive. And though they could not know what challenges awaited them, they knew they would meet them side by side, ready to build a family in a world that had not been kind to either of them. From that night on, the ranch was no longer just a place of survival. It was a home, a sanctuary, and the beginning of a new life for both of them. And the life growing quietly inside the woman, a symbol of hope and renewal in the harsh world around them. Their days were no longer only about hiding or enduring. They were about planning, caring, and slowly, quietly, loving. And in the silence of the land, their bond became stronger, unbroken by fear, stronger than danger, and unshakable in the face of an uncertain future. The months passed slowly, but with a quiet sense of purpose. The woman's pregnancy grew, and with it, the bond between her and the rancher deepened. They were no longer just two people sharing shelter. They were partners, facing the dangers and joys of life together. The ranch, once quiet and empty, had become alive with their shared presence. Each day, they worked side by side, caring for animals, tending the land, and preparing for the child that would soon join them. The woman moved with care, yet there was strength in her movements. She had survived countless hardships, and that strength now shaped the rhythm of the ranch. She taught the rancher how to notice the smallest signs of change, the direction of the wind, the behavior of the horses, the way clouds shifted in the sky. He followed her guidance, learning skills he had never imagined he would need. Their trust in one another was unspoken but complete. Every gesture, every glance carried meaning. At night, they shared stories by the fire, speaking softly about their pasts, their hopes, and their fears. The woman told of her childhood in the wilderness, of lessons learned from her parents, and of the traditions that shaped her people. The rancher spoke of loss, of loneliness, and of the quiet life he had lived since tragedy had taken his family. They listened to each other, not just with ears but with understanding hearts. Each story brought them closer, weaving their lives together in ways that neither could have foreseen. As the time for the child's arrival approached, the rancher's protective instincts grew stronger. He worried constantly about the dangers that might come from outside, soldiers, neighbors, or anyone who might threaten the fragile peace they had built. He reinforced the fences, secured the doors, and kept a careful watch over the surrounding land. The woman, aware of his concern, reassured him with calm words and steady action. She knew fear could not guide their future, only courage and preparation could. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills, the woman spoke softly. "The child will come soon," she said. "We must be ready, not only for them but for ourselves." Her words were gentle, yet carried authority. She had faced life-and-death situations before, and she knew that preparation and calm were the keys to survival. The rancher nodded, feeling a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. He had never been responsible for life in this way before. The thought of holding a child, of guiding and protecting it, filled him with a sense of awe he could not fully express. Yet he knew that he would face whatever challenges came with the same determination he had shown in keeping the woman safe. In the days that followed, they worked together tirelessly. They arranged a small room in the house for the child, gathering blankets, clothing, and supplies. The woman taught him how to care for a newborn, demonstrating with patience and precision. He followed her guidance carefully, learning skills he had never imagined he would need. Each day, their bond grew stronger, built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. Finally, the moment arrived. The woman went into labor in the quiet of the night. The rancher remained by her side, supporting her with calm words and steady hands. She handled the pain with remarkable courage, and he marveled at her strength. Hours passed, filled with effort and quiet determination, until at last, a child was born. A small, healthy infant who opened its eyes to the world for the first time. The rancher held the child close, feeling a connection that was immediate and profound. He looked at the woman, seeing not only the mother of his child but the partner who had shared every danger and every moment of trust. Their eyes met, and in that gaze they understood that they had created something lasting, something that would carry their love and courage forward into the future. In the days and weeks that followed, life at the ranch settled into a new rhythm. The child grew stronger each day, and the rancher and the woman continued to work side by side, caring for the land and the animals. The woman taught the rancher the ways of her people, sharing traditions and lessons that had been passed down for generations. He listened carefully, eager to pass these teachings on to the child as well. The rancher had once lived a life of quiet solitude, but now his days were filled with purpose, connection, and the joy of family. Neighbors and travelers occasionally passed near the ranch, but the couple maintained their careful vigilance. They knew the world could be harsh and unforgiving, yet they had built a sanctuary that could withstand danger. Their home was no longer just a place of shelter. It was a place of love, learning, and growth. The child, born of courage and trust, would inherit not only the land but the lessons of survival, resilience, and partnership. One morning, as the sun rose over the hills, the rancher looked at the woman and the child. He realized that life had brought them together through a series of choices, some small, some impossible, and that each choice had led them to this moment. The woman smiled at him, and he returned the smile with gratitude and respect. They had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty together, and they had built a family that would endure. As the seasons passed, their lives continued with quiet joy and steadfast effort. The child grew, learning both the ways of the ranch and the traditions of the woman's people. The rancher and the woman taught lessons not only through words but through action, showing patience, courage, and the value of trust. They had faced challenges that could have torn them apart, yet they had chosen to remain together, building a life of resilience and love. Years later, the rancher would reflect on the night she first arrived at the door. He remembered the fear, the uncertainty, and the choice he had made to shelter her. He understood then that one act of compassion had changed the course of his life forever. The woman, once a fugitive seeking safety, had become the heart of a family that thrived in a world that had once seemed cruel and unforgiving. Together, they had faced the storms of life, the dangers of the land, and the challenges of bringing a child into the world. And in doing so, they had created a legacy of courage, trust, and love, a family that would carry their stories forward, generation after generation. The ranch was no longer simply a place of survival. It was a home, a refuge, and a testament to the power of compassion, partnership, and unwavering courage in the face of uncertainty. In the end, the rancher, the woman, and their child had built more than a life. They had built hope. They had created a story that proved that even in the harshest circumstances, kindness, courage, and trust could change everything. The land around them remained vast and challenging, but within the walls of the ranch house, there was warmth, safety, and the certainty that family, born from choice and shared bravery, was the greatest legacy of all.